Hello, this is VOW, Voices of Wisdom, the show that might not be for everybody, but everybody needs to watch this show. It's Christmas time, and this time of the year is a joyous time for families, but sometimes it can be a time of a depression for some people who are lonely and think about things that has happened in their lives. I'm going to read a part of this book. Beginning to deal with memories and suppressed feelings can throw your life into utter turmoil. Assure the victim that that is the only stage, and it won't last forever. Trust in yourself that is the best guide for healing is your own inner voice. Learn to trust your own perceptives, feelings, and intuition. As childhood sexual abuse survivors, we struggle to survive. Grieving is a way to acknowledge pain, let go, and move into the present. Today, my guest is a lifelong learner. She obtained her bachelor's degree in business services. She elaborates on the distinction between the feelings of childhood abuse, sexual abuse, victims, and social development, providing excellent strategies for building positive social development and healing. Welcome.
Thank you.
Miss Edna White.
Thank you so much.
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm really good. Glad to be here.
You know, this topic, as we know, is pretty heavy.
Oh, yeah.
And I appreciate and I thank you for being brave enough to talk about your life and what happened in this book called Stuff. Stuff, giving voice to the secret of childhood sexual abuse. Now tell us why you decided to write this book.
Well, the book actually was written several years ago.
Really?
And it sat because I didn't want to hurt my family's feelings. I didn't want to upset them. I didn't want to upset my mother, my children. And it sat for 10 years.
Really?
Yeah, 10 years. And it was in my cloud, as it were, for 10 years in Google for a while. But I decided one day, I was on social media talking to somebody, and she was going through different issues, and I was sharing with her how to overcome. And then she goes, well, did you ever write a book? And I was like, yeah, I have. And I kind of dug it out, and she said, you really helped me a lot. This was somebody who was in the UK, and they were talking to me long distance.
Wow.
And, you know, she was experiencing some heavy things. She was only 16. And I was in my late 30s, I think. My late 30s, almost like 40, yeah. And I dug the book out, and I said, you know, there's no time like the present, because I wanted to prevent other people from feeling or this happening too. Because it's like being hit on a bushel. If I wrote it and didn't help anybody,
True.
You know, what am I writing it for? So that started me to come out, and then I was asked, once I posted it, I was asked to speak on different panels against sexual abuse. And I was adopted by RAINN as one of their preferred readers,
Awesome.
That's how it started. It started blossoming from there, and going to speaking engagements. So it really was, that was the beginning. I helped someone else.
So if you don't mind, just give us briefly the beginning of when this started to happen. At what age were you when this started to happen? 5 years old?
5 years old.
And do you mind telling us who was your abuser?
My perpetrator was my stepfather.
Was your stepfather?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a heavy subject for me, but I'm going to continue.
Okay.
Most people who have gone through sexual abuse, sometimes they don't really know what's happening to them. And at 5 years old, absolutely, Tell us.
I didn't know what was happening. As I look back on it, he treated me like I was an adult.
Really?
So he asked me the question after he perpetrated me. He's like, how did that feel? And I didn't know how to answer that. I was frozen. I literally stood there for like a minute, like wondering, like, what was that, you know? And from that point on, I started to die. Like, every emotion in me started to die because I didn't know how to disseminate what it was. And I remember at 7, 8, I don't remember much. Like, I don't remember. He was my first perpetrator because I was passed around.
Excuse me?
He was my first perpetrator. I was passed around.
And could you explain what you mean by that?
That he had friends that he would share me with.
Okay. So all this was happening in your house, in your home?
Yeah, sure, yes.
And was it any particular place? Was it in your bedroom? Was it in your living room?
It was every opportunity he had that when no one's around. So he would make up, you know, he was a truck driver most of the time. He wasn't there a lot, but when he was there, it was frequent. His preferred place was the cellar. Like, he would ask, because I was the oldest, he would ask me to bring tools down. So I knew what tools that were there, and he would ask me to bring down, you know, a tool or some water for him, and it would take place in the cellar. We lived in Patchogue. So Patchogue had, like, the older houses had cellars,
right,
like wine cellars.
Right.
So it was the cellar. It wasn't the basement. It was the cellar. So cellars were his choice, you know, for those things to happen, or to just be anywhere that he could possibly sneak to do something. Like, he lived to kind of get caught.
Oh,
as
so
I
that
got
was
older.
almost like a danger kind of, you know,
Yeah.
some people do
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't help but have to rewind just 1 second when you said that, I wasn't ready for this one, when you said he passed you around. So he would bring his friends there?
He would, the way he started grooming me in the beginning was he would start showing me, like, I guess they were Playboy books. I don't know what they were. They were like books with like sex in them, you know, people having sex. He would show me those things. Then he would literally gave me condoms, and I thought they were balloons, and I was blowing them up. And he was showing me those things. He was like really grooming me for his friends. So his friends were like guys that just like hung out. Like, we'd often have like social parties, and it's funny because me and my brother were the oldest. We'd be the servers, so we'd serve the hors d'oeuvres, that kind of thing, up until a certain time, and then my mom said we'd have to go to bed. But those friends that hung around, and he would just like, you know, hang around. Look, this is my daughter, you know, and sit on his lap, sit down, hug him, hug your uncle. And it wasn't my uncle; it was just a random person.
So it's a very good possibility that he kind of already had let these men know that he was doing things to you?
Probably.
That sounds like what could have happened.
Sure.
So, of course, I have to ask, where was your mom during all this time, or anybody else? Was anybody else in the house maybe had an idea that this was happening to you?
I was the oldest. My siblings were all young, very young, so they didn't have an idea. My aunt, it happened to my aunt. She had moved out.
So he abused your aunt as well?
Yes, and she moved out. She came when she was 15 and moved with my mom, because we moved from Alabama. So I was living with my great-grandparents while my mother was up here in New York. And then when she found the house, we moved here with him. But my aunt came a little bit later, and it happened to her, and she moved out. She did. I'm not sure if she ever said anything, but when I did tell her, she believed me right away. It was like, it was no hesitation. She believed me.
So you think, was this happening when your aunt came, you think this was happening at the same time or before or after? I'm just trying to...
I was too young.
You were too young to understand that, yeah.
No, I don't know. Because she was living there for like 2 years, and then She was like, I have to go. And we didn't know why.
So it never really came out why?
No.
So as this abuse went on, abuse went on from 5 to what age?
15.
To 15.
Mm.
10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yep, 10 years.
So at any point, generally I've heard stories where most of perpetrators, they give you some sort of threat or fear of telling. So what was his way of telling you? Or
he would tell me that he would either kill me or kill my mom. That was his phrase. I'll kill you and I'll kill your mom. Because there was abuse in the home. He fought my mom. He was a philanderer.
So he's abusive to your mom as well.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow. So as time went on, when did you finally get to that place when you decided to say something?
Oh, I remember my teacher, Miss Murray, never will forget her, in Patchogue. I used to write with, I'm a lefty, so I used to write like this, and she would come to my desk and always hold my hand and try to turn it the right way. And she was my English teacher. And she would always say, you're very good at words, you know all your words. I was very good in vocabulary. And I always used to stay after school, and talk with her because she made me comfortable. And one day I was really sad, and she said, "What's wrong?" And I told her, I said, I think I'm being abused, because that was the first year I ever had taken what they call, I think it was health. First time, and then they were showing the pictures of the penis and the vagina. I'm like, so when is this supposed to happen? So I was asking questions because I didn't know, and that's when they started catching on. She taught that class, so she was like, stay after class with me, because I was asking, like, when is this supposed to happen? Like, what is that for? And I was asking, like, literal questions.
And how old were you then?
I was 12.
You was 12, okay.
I was 12.
Okay.
And she knew something was going on then. Then she said, why would you ask such a question? I said, because I think it happened to me already. And so she said, how did it happen? And I told her, and the police came and went back to the house. They took me, went back to the house. They said, you're not in trouble. We just want to go over with you to your mom. And they went in first, explained what I said. Then they brought me in. I explained. And the police officer said, you have to handle it. Told my mother, you have to handle it. And I don't believe there was a system in place for something like this back then. And my mom said, okay, I'll handle it. So when the police officers left, my mom said, you go to your aunt's house. So my aunt lived around the corner at the time. So I walked around the corner, stayed with her. I think I was with her about 2 or 3 days. And then my mom told me I came back with my aunt, and my mother said, you stay in your room and he'll stay on this side of the house. And that was the resolve. So I was banished to my room, never to cross where their room was in the living room, and I was banished to that side. So it was a punishment, and I felt like I shouldn't have said anything because I was being punished, and I wasn't the one doing the wrong thing.
That's so, I've heard it being typical that way, when it's the mother's husband or mother's boyfriend, they almost don't want to admit or either deal with it, and they leave the perpetrator in the house. But the other thing I want to back up with, when I think you had mentioned to me when you were sharing with me about your story about how you used to literally try to wash off. Could you explain to us what happened with all that?
Yes, I was a cutter as well. I used to cut with the inside of the razor blade. I used to break the bick, and I used to cut the inside of my leg. So because it felt better than feeling the pain that I was in, because I was numb for several years. And
before you go there, I want to understand about cutting, Because I've heard that before, and you know, anybody who doesn't have not done that and don't really understand, as I don't really totally understand, but I've heard that before, where you cut because the pain, that pain is better than the other pain that you're dealing with,
Sure.
and also that you feel numb.
Right.
So is that cutting making you almost feel that you're alive, or
Yes.
that you're?
Yeah, it started with me peeling literally peeling my skin till it bled. All my fingers were bloody. And when I felt that, I was like, I was focused on something else.
Oh, I got you. I understand.
Okay, I was focused on something else because my brain was always thinking about, is it tonight? Is he gonna come in my room tonight? Is he gonna do this to me tonight? And I was always hyper vigilant, you know, always thinking like, how can I get I used to go to school and stay at school and take after school activities just to stay there. I used to, I had very little friends because they didn't want us to get close to anybody, because if I had said anything, so I had very little friends. So when I figured that peeling my hand and the blood gushing out felt better than, I'm focused on this. And I don't remember how exactly that I figured, I was razoring my legs. That's what I was doing. And it cut, and then I said, and that's what it was. And I started doing it just like, as soon as I would run into the bathroom after school, it's going to be the day, let me not think about it, and just cut in one spot and just wear pants. I was always wearing pants no matter what. I never cut up above, but it was always the inner leg for me.
And your mother never noticed that, huh?
No.
So I've heard other stories, and very similar to stories, where the victim goes into the bathroom, they try to wash it all off. So you're saying that, how did you?
After it used to happen, I used to go in the bathroom and take a Brillo. I always had money, because I used to cut off the lights for, in my neighborhood was a lot of Jewish people, so on Fridays they would pay us to cut the lights off in their houses, so I'd get like 50 cents. And so I used to buy Brillo, and I used to take the Brillo and like literally rub my skin, like between the fingers, every inch of my body. I would be in the shower for hours.
Wow.
Hours.
Wow. And that made you feel like you were cleansing yourself? Is that really
actually,
what that?
my skin felt like it was like, like it was vibrant, like I was real.
You know, it makes me think, when you're talking about cutting and the cutting, I'm thinking right now, in my mind, is that you feel numb. So it's almost like making yourself feel like you're still here, and you're still alive, which is amazing.
Exactly.
I just never, I'm just really, that revelation is coming to me right now, thinking of that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, you told me that, unfortunately, or during this whole time, you end up getting pregnant by the perpetrator.
14.
And at 14, you got pregnant.
I didn't know I was, because my mother never taught us about sex. I learned it from school. He had been really careful prior to then, but I guess I was getting older.
When you say careful, what do you mean by that, if you don't mind me?
Careful, wearing condoms, not inserting, only external. So he was very careful in those ways. It's maybe just that one time, and I was getting stronger. I was getting older and stronger and fighting.
I was going to ask you that. Was it any time that you were fighting him? Yeah. So what he, by fighting him, sometime I hate to even go there, but sometimes fighting would make him abuse you even more.
Right.
So I'm just thinking of.
Yeah, and he was a bigger guy, resisting just made it even more fun, in my mind, to him.
Made it more fun. Wow. At that time, I guess it really wasn't prevalent. It wasn't any laws in place, I guess, at that time. But when your teacher when you finally exposed that to your teacher, was there any kind of follow-up, even in the school?
I was sent to, my mother sent me to a a Catholic school. So my punishment for a year was to go, I was a wayward child, as it were. I was disobedient, and so that was my punishment. And that was the way it silenced me, so I never spoke about it again after that. I was about 13. Went to a Catholic school for about a year.
Okay. Okay. So you were punished for the abuse that was happening to you.
Yeah.
So how did that, psychologically, how did that really affect you? And how did you, obviously writing this book.
I had no voice.
How, that's what I wanted to hear.
I had no voice. I spoke very little. I was involved very little. When I was of age to start venturing out to work, I chose jobs that I didn't have to speak to anyone, that I was in the background. I chose modeling because all they could do was, look at me. I didn't have to say a word, just stand still. It was perfect. I did that for about till I was 23. It was perfect.
But see, that's a wonderful thing in a sense, because sometimes people, victims feel like they're not beautiful, they're not, but for you even to step out to do that, I think that was really, that was good.
I think that was just God.
I'm sure.
I think it was really God.
And that was a time, how long was that time period when you were modeling?
From 18 to 23.
Oh, that's great. So that was like 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in New York?
It was in New York. I was working with Vogue and models, Guess jeans. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And how'd you happen to get that opportunity?
I actually was at Models, actually. And someone saw me and is like, would you like to model the jeans? I said, sure. And that's how it started. And he passed my name to a school, and the school said, we'll pay for you to go to school here and learn some steps and movements, and that's how it started. So it was easy.
And that was all probably like an escape too.
Yeah, it was really great because I could stand still. I used to do like still modeling and stand still for hours. So it was great. It was a release for me to kind of hide out and have like an adventure. Like, it was great. It was just really fulfilling, but not really. Not really. It was just a way for me to hide. So it kept me sane.
Got you. So during after that time when you decided to really kind of identify what you were dealing with, I think that's where I want to end this kind of interview with you, really talking about how you came to where you are now, and how you can just give some tidbits of helping someone else. I'm sure someone out there is going through this or have gone through this, and I'm sure what you can share with people now can help them at this point.
I think that if you don't do it alone, I mean, there's someone that's always out there to listen to you. Don't be afraid to say anything, because everyone knows something is going on with you. Everyone knew something was going on with me.
But they didn't know what.
They didn't know what. And, don't be afraid, because someone will listen and someone will hear you. Don't lose your voice totally. My voice was gone. I couldn't speak for myself. So I indulged in writing, of course. I wrote everything. I just kept writing and writing. But don't lose your voice. And don't be afraid to get help. The way I got help, I had my son at 17, and I was depressed, completely depressed. And he was 9 months old, and I decided I was going to kill myself. So I took him with me. I'm walking home from my friend's house with him on my shoulder, on my hip, and I was like so depressed. I was crying. He was like wiping my tears, just wiping my tears. And I went and sat on the train tracks. I kid you not, sat on the train tracks. And I sat there crying, my son still on my lap, and I'm waiting for the train to come. Train never showed up. And I sat up, I said, I can't even kill myself right.
Wow.
Wow. Went home, still crying, still upset. Got on the bus to take my son to see Spider-Man at Sweezy's. Got on the bus and I was just crying and crying. The tears were flowing. This lady walked past me. That's why I know it was God. This lady walked past me and she touched my shoulder. And on the bus, I just looked at her and She came back when she was getting off the bus, touched my shoulder again, and in her hand was a card, and the card slipped down into my lap. And I just, I just picked it up and I looked at it. And I didn't really look at it, I just put it in my pocket. So on the way back home, I'm digging for something in my pocket, and I look at the card, and it's a psychiatrist that specialized in sexual trauma.
Wow.
That lived like a town away from me.
Wow.
And that's where I started. All my healing was there. I was able to get the tools that I needed to start to clean out some of this stuff. It's going to be a long journey. Don't get it wrong, because emotionally, I was a wreck. I was a wreck. I wasn't healed, and it takes a long time, because I was tricked out of my whole childhood.
Absolutely.
Imagination. I had none of that.
Wow.
None of that.
Wow.
I couldn't even play with toys. I didn't know what to do with them. Cartoons, none of that. I didn't know what to do with that. So I just, for anyone that's listening out there, take the time to heal. It's okay. If you don't heal like the next person, it's okay too. That you're not that person. Heal the way you're supposed to heal in your time, and take your time.
Wow, we have 15 seconds left, and that was perfect. I want to share with you that I held it up.
Yeah.
Because I also experienced abuse.
Yeah.
And I thank you for being brave enough to come here today. This has been VOW, Voices of Wisdom. Merry Christmas and have a happy holiday.